This is Kara Kenny. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my idea for a blended learning experience for differentiation in my fourth grade classroom. So this week, as I was learning about blended learning, I thought a lot about the difference between the blended classroom and a flipped classroom. We learned a lot this year in my district about the flipped classroom, and in particular, I had been planning to do some in-class flip activities next year. And I think that, those definitions there's certainly some overlap, and I think that an in-class flip where students are getting content while they're in the classroom that maybe normally they would have been given to by a teacher in some kind of other mode is very similar to the idea of blended learning. One of the things I was thinking about a lot this week when we were learning about technology in the blended classroom was that it really needs to be transformative. It can't just be that instead of reading a book, they're going to read a book online, or instead of writing something, they're going to type something. It really needs to transform the teaching. So this week I was thinking a lot about how I could use technology to really move to the modification or redefining stages. Another thing I thought a lot about this week was how we could use technology in a blended learning classroom to really individualize and how we could use that data to make better teaching choices for our students. Also, I was thinking a lot about student pacing and choice and how having a blended classroom would really allow for that in a much more seamless fashion. When I thought about how blended learning would help in my specific environment, I thought about, and I'm a literacy specialist, so I work with small groups of students that are at risk for learning to read, and I really see it as a tool for individualizing. I see it as an opportunity to redefine my face-to-face time that I have with my students, and I really see it as an opportunity to create some things or find some interactive things that kids could use to teach some of the skills that could be done easily that way, and that would allow me more time to work on the face-to-face things that I think are really important for kids to learn how to do. So I see the blended learning allowing me to have more time to meet with my students individually. And I also see their technology time being much more valuable and data-driven. I really like this quote. The last couple of chapters of the book that by George Couros, I think really spoke to me as someone who works with students who struggle and about how they need the opportunity to learn those basic skills, and we have to keep working on that. But they also need the opportunities to be creative, to try new things, to show what they know in other ways. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that when we're so busy trying to catch them up. The way that we learn, the way that we teach students, even the most basic skills, must reflect and capitalize on the technology information and people we have access to today. The research article that I read this week was very interesting. It was extremely applicable to my job. It was about a school-wide implementation of a blended learning program for reading intervention, and they specifically used the Core 5 program, which is something that we have at our school. And it talked about how by using this program in a blended classroom where the students moved from a learning station to learning station, and by then using the data from this Core 5 to inform the teaching, they were able to improve the student scores on standardized tests. Made perfect sense to me. Obviously, anytime that you're meeting a kid right where they are and giving them their next best teaching, you're going to get movement in the right direction. My idea for a project this year for blended learning has to do with a Revolutionary War project that our students do in grade 4. So each year in grade 4, after a sort of an overview of the Revolutionary War, the students choose a subtopic and they're tasked with creating a presentation to share with other fourth graders. The reading involved in this is often much too difficult for the students that I work with. And so the teacher and I often guide their choices so that when they work with me, I can read with them and I can guide them through the note-taking tasks. By creating a blended learning experience in which the students could explore these texts individually and at their own pace while taking notes, I think this would really allow for more in-depth understanding of the topic, and also they could work on this with me during our time, and also they could work on it in the classroom and not be left waiting for me or pretending to do work, which they sometimes do. So my idea is to use a couple of different programs. One is EPIC, which is a collection of online books, and they do have a read to me section, so I would find some books that students could listen to that have to do with the Revolutionary War. And if those are not available, I could create a video of myself reading some of those books to them. This is what they use in the classroom, so it's not going to be that different, but it will have that slight modification of being able to listen to the stories as well as follow along and read. Additionally, they use Ducksters.com, which has some kid-friendly history information, and I could create a video where I read the materials on this reference so that they could access it on their own time and not be hindered by the reading. I also could make a collection of YouTube videos that have simple information about these subtopics. And I would also create some guided notes. So notes that are guided are really important for my students. So I would create something like this where I could show them the same questions they could use every time that they're reading something. So every time that they are exploring something about the Boston Tea Party, they're going to just think about those important questions: who, what, where, when, and why. Some room for some other interesting things that they want to include. And by having this topic, this note-taking guide be similar, it's going to take away that anxiety about what they're supposed to do next. So it would just be a simple note-taking form that I would have pre-taught, and then they can fill that in as they are going along. One of the things that I've learned this year is that simple can sometimes be better, especially for a learner who has some tangles. So when I'm looking at all these different programs and things that are available, I think a lot of them are fantastic. And I think that it's important to find the ones that are going to be the best fit and really teach your children how to use those well. So I think that in this blended learning experience, that by individualizing this, I can give the students an opportunity to choose their topic. So just because they work with me, it doesn't mean they all have to study the same thing. I can make a collection of activities and things for them to access that will allow them to learn at their own pace and then give them that really simple note-taking structure. I can set them up for success. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your feedback. And here is my slides go that I used to make this project.